Losh by Grieveson. Prologue. Last night I went to bed around 10 o'clock, both body and heart aching and seeking the blessing of sleep. I woke at 1:30 a.m. this morning, the bedsheets drenched with sweat. It has been like this for the last week. The sickening feeling of reality, and after a few minutes, the inevitable tears. I smoke a couple cigarettes to pass the time more quickly. Suddenly there's a tremendous crash outside my second-story window. I sit upright and a sparrow flies into the room. Its wings flap desperately as it flies from one corner of the ceiling to the others, finally perching on the frame of a painting. My heart beats wildly. This is the first night I have spent in our bed and room since my wife's funeral 3 days ago. The sparrow beats its wing against the window pane, attempting to escape, but being unable to distinguish between the glass and the narrow opening through which it entered, its antics are useless. I stretched out a hand to guide it, but startle the bird, and it flies to a higher perch in the room. "Very well, bird," I say to the sparrow. "Whether you are a sign or not, I won't be getting any sleep tonight. Perhaps you can keep me company in my grief. I will tell you a story. The story of the woman of whom you remind me so very much." Who's taken the woman with fireflies for eyes, can't cook, can't stitch, can't do anything sometimes but cool this itch? Caught her in the river, thought she was a bear, she looked at me, I saw myself in stars, she carried me across the sky to a warm painted lodge. Now she says the firewood too heavy, the river too far, but she's still a bear, makes medicines to keep me happy. Woman, strike the lodge with your one big stroke. We follow the setting sun. We forgot your sister across the sky. Karaniyaki Tati. Losh and I met the night of August 22nd, 1974. It was in the morning, actually, shortly after the pubs were closed. I was sitting in my room getting drunk with a friend when she came to the door looking for my next-door neighbor. He wasn't there. I invited her to stay, but she left. My friend left a few minutes later, and soon after she came back. She smiled, closed the door, and locked it. When we reached each other, we embraced without speaking. The warmth of her lips and the scent of her hair drove me wild with passion. Fumbling, we discarded our clothes and sank down upon the bed. We made love with an urgency and frenzy I had rarely known. When I went to sleep, she was nestled against my arm. I make no apologies for the way we met. Both of us had a sense of loneliness so very deep and a need to love so very great. It wasn't proper, I suppose, or socially acceptable. It doesn't matter. She was an Indian and I was a hippie. Neither of us cared for the moral hypocrisy of society. She was more of a woman than any woman I've ever known, more of a lady than any lady I've ever known. When we woke in the morning, it was with good-natured embarrassment that we realized we didn't even know each other's name. She told me later she thought I was funny-looking, with red hair, beard, and freckles, and the worst teeth she had ever seen. In contrast, I thought she was very beautiful. She had jet black hair which hung almost to her waist. Her complexion was fair yet golden brown. Her teeth were pearly white. Her figure was ample yet slender and well proportioned. I guess it was a case of in for a penny, in for a pound. We ate breakfast, then made love again as if to cement our newfound friendship. The most difficult part of the morning was when my next-door neighbor, Jimbo, whom she had originally come to see the previous night, paid me a visit. He saw Losh as she came out of the washroom, and his face was pained. He asked her hard whether she had spent the night with me. She told him it was none of his business, with a harshness she didn't really mean. He left again, and I consoled her. I was living in Rochdale College at the time, and supplemented my income by getting beer for the bootleggers in my station wagon. I only charged 50 cents per case, but as I averaged 20 cases a day, it guaranteed me a case of 24 for personal consumption, and a few dollars besides. Losh came with me that morning, and she thought buying 20 cases at a time was fantastic. She shared with me an uncommon fondness for the brew. It was probably one of the original reasons why she was attracted to me. After delivering the beer, I drove her over to the place she was staying. We talked in the car for a long time, reluctant to say goodbye. She came over that evening with her girlfriend and stayed that night. In the morning, she left again. For the next 2 or 3 days, we saw each other like that, together at night and apart during the day. She had told me that she intended to get a plane ticket from Indian Affairs and fly back to Winnipeg, where she came from. I agreed to drive her to the airport. The day she was supposed to leave, she phoned me to say she was sick. I drove her to the doctor's and waited in the park till she returned. When she came back, we returned to my apartment in Rochdale College, and she moved in to stay. The beginning of our relationship was new and exciting. It was like a courtship and a honeymoon all in one. We were together from the moment we woke up to the moment we went to sleep. We were so curious about each other, what happened in our past, and how we felt about the present. Losh was a name given to her and invented by her father. He said it meant "from my heart." He was an Indian of the Saulteaux tribe and built a log cabin in the woods. Her mother went to the hospital in Winnipeg when she was pregnant with Losh, but didn't get along with the doctors. The doctor examined her, didn't say hello, introduce himself, or anything else. He simply strode into the room and told her to spread her legs. His hands were cold, and she instinctively closed her knees. He ordered her to pry them wide, and when she hesitated, tried forcefully to pry them open. At this point, she punched him in the nose and gave him a nosebleed. She fled the hospital and returned to her home in the woods. Losh was born in a log cabin. Her mother went into labor behind a screen partition to prevent the other children from seeing. The local midwife couldn't be found, and Losh was delivered by her 13-year-old sister. Her first cry of life startled her sister Happy, age 3, who cried hysterically until comforted by her father. Traditional Indian manner, her mother hung the umbilical cord in a tree, thus ensuring that the newborn babe would be strong and healthy. Losh remembered her early childhood as the happiest time of her life. Her parents had 14 children. Losh was the 8th oldest. Her father was strong. As well as building their cabin with his own hands, he supported his large family by hunting, trapping, and fishing. Several times a year he went into town and traded his furs for flour to make bannock and other simple necessities. They were poor. The only dolls Losh had were wooden blocks of cedar. She slept with her parents and all her brothers and sisters in the same room. Her first memory of lovemaking was the groans and whispering of her parents when the children were supposed to be asleep. The forest, the meadows, the streams, these things Losh loved more than anything else in the world. When she was around 9, the game and animals were becoming scarce.